Hi, and welcome to Insights with Alaya Books. Today we have Alyssa Brade with us, and she's going to tell us about her writing projects. She seems very prolific. I believe there's two novels that are underway, and you've also, this month, you will be launching a non-fiction book. So we're extremely excited to hear about it. Please tell us.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to chat with you a little bit today. So yes, I've written two fiction novels and then a nonfiction novel, and I'm just focusing right now on trying to get them into the hands of my ideal audience, my readers. I think honestly, for me, the most intimidating part of publishing is actually the work of publishing and not so much the work of writing the book itself.
Yeah, you seem to be a natural writer. I know you've done a master's in English and you've been an English teacher. Um, yes, tell us
Yeah,
a little bit about your background with writing.
so I love to tell stories since I was a little girl. I think like most authors, I love to read. So I would spend hours and hours reading as a child. And then as I got older, I really wanted to write a story about my Nonna. So the first book is about my Nonna. That's Italian for grandma.
Oh,
Uh, so the first book is about my Nonna. She passed away in 2020, and I wasn't able to attend her funeral. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada originally, and with the travel restrictions in place, I couldn't go. And then my Nono, which is Italian for grandpa, passed away in 2022, and I again wasn't able to go because of the travel restrictions in place. And so that was really hard. So I think the first novel I wrote, it's called Ciao Bella Bambina. It translates to Goodbye, Beautiful Girl. And it's actually something my Nona said to me as a child growing up all the time. And so the book was inspired by her story. She grew up in World War II, Italy, grew up in with a lot of poverty, got pregnant with my Nona in a tiny, small, very Catholic town, unwed, and that was very scandalous at the time. She never married, never took another man, and nobody to this day knows who the man was. She took it to her grave with her. And then her daughter ended up immigrating to Canada to follow the boy next door who kind of stole her heart. And when she got there, she ended up falling in love with a different man, and was devastated because he didn't return her affection. So she ended up marrying my Nono and was a little bit so that it's their story. I wanted to make sure that it was told. It was really important and dear to my heart that I got to tell kind of their incredible journey and the strength of women, and the resilience that people can face, and how looking for a better future kind of looks different for everyone and what that means. So that is the first novel I worked on, and it's still the book that's closest to my heart.
yes.
Um,
Sounds a bit like a family history or memoir, actually.
it it is a little bit. It's a multi-generational story. It has three different perspectives: the great grandma, the grandma, and then the daughter. So I feel like that book was kind of my debut, first introduction to writing. Writing a book was very different from academic writing. So I've learned a lot along the way. I've had some excellent coaches, some excellent mentors. Um, and that inspired me to be like, I can do this. I can learn. And so I started working on my nonfiction book. And that was really inspired by, I had so many moms in my life who had just come to me and sharing the same struggles and the same heartaches of I'm overwhelmed, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out. I hate being a mom. I hate parenting. I hate trying to do this. And it was really heartbreaking for me that a whole generation of women felt like they could never measure up and they were always exhausted. And no matter what they did, it just wasn't enough. Um, and having two kids under two at the time, I could really relate to that feeling of losing yourself and being so burnt out and overwhelmed and lost in life, and like somehow being a mom had overtaken every other part of who you were. So I started on a journey of discovering what in society is causing us to feel like we have to achieve so much. And then what intrinsically within me is causing me to feel like I need to be this super mom all the time or I'm failing. So I wrote this book and it was inspired really selfishly. It was inspired for moms, not out of a place of like, oh, this is how to parent better, or this is how to raise your children the right way, or this is what your children need from you. It was really inspired from a place of oh, all the moms out there who are struggling to find who you are. I've been there. I've done a lot of the work. Let me share some of the things I learned with you so that you don't have to spend the hours that I did feeling like a failure. Here's the reason why our society is set up the way it is to really make moms burn out.
So the topics, I remember some like information overload and other things, because we just, yeah, it's
Yes,
overwhelming, isn't it? I'm a risk mom
exactly.
too, so
Oh,
yeah.
yes, you know with your daughter that it's like
Well, I
you.
warned my friends after my daughter was born. I just said, look, I'm just not going to keep the pace with my messaging and other things. You know, a lot of friends wanted even phone calls, this and that, and I felt terrible. But
Yeah,
I was
yes,
just like, you know what? I just want to focus on this little one, and I don't feel I've got that much time. So I just changed my way. Mm.
I see, and that is so inspiring to me because I think a lot of women that I talk to, and myself included, it's like I don't need to change. Like I can do it all. I can handle it all. And I don't know if, at least for me, I feel like it wasn't the maturity and the confidence in myself to just be like, no, this is a new season of life, and this season of life, I can't do everything I did in the old season of life, and that's okay. It doesn't mean I'm failing myself. It doesn't mean I'm failing my children. It doesn't mean I'm failing my significant other. Um, so that was a big mental shift. And I love that you said that because I feel like it's inspiring for so many women to know you can still be a successful entrepreneur. You can still have passions outside of your children. You can still run your own business. You can still do whatever it is that you have on your heart to do, but it might just look a little bit different, and that's okay.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so tell us the title of that book.
So that book is called Mommy Needs a Minute, from Burnout to Empowerment. And really the focus is it's a short read. The goal is that you can just pick it up and skim read a chapter or two at a time, because I know as moms, we're all very busy, have a lot on our plate. It's hard to take that time.
Yes.
Um, and the goal is that by the time you get to the end of the book, you understand why you're feeling burned out, the practical ways that you can prevent that burnout or stop it from continuing to happen, and feel empowered, not just in your journey with motherhood, but as an individual, as a woman, as somebody who is learning to just know themselves better.
Right. Oh, I think it's amazing. And I think it's exactly, even though I did have those little things in mind, I needed a handbook like that, because mothering, it shocked me. I was just like working and doing my thing. And then suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to care for somebody else. How do I do this?
It is, and
It's
they
a
don't come
full-time
like.
job.
Yes, and they don't come with handbooks. So then you're like, anybody, like, how do I take care of this small human?
I quite like the story, because I know when I read parts of the introduction of your book that you didn't actually plan to get pregnant. So could you just share what happened?
So I was always very a career driven, very A-type personality. I worked full time during my undergraduate degree. I worked full time during my master's program, and I was told that I would never be able to have children. So I had really solidified that in my brain that I was like, oh, I'm not having kids, and that's great because I really want my career, and that is my baby. And then 2 months before COVID lockdowns and all of that the world kind of exploded, I found out I was pregnant, and it was shocking. My boyfriend at the time was also very shocked. Um, and so we ended up having our little guy in November 2020 with all of the chaos of the pandemic. And I was in the middle of my master's degree program. And I was the mom who was like, I'm not compromising my life and my career for a baby. And so 2 hours after giving birth, I was submitting my assignments. I was grading papers for students. I was like, I can just do it all. And that kind of continued all the way up until May when I found out that I was pregnant again with my second, which my husband had gotten a vasectomy back in January, and we were like, you're not having any more kids. And so it was shocking. um, I remember just crying in the doctor's office because I
Oh,
at the time had a 5-month-old, and I was like, I can't do
you were
this again. I
tired.
was,
You were working too much, and you had a
yes.
baby. And oh my God.
It was a lot. I was trying to finish my thesis, my dissertation for a graduation, and we had our firstborn in a tiny little 1-bedroom apartment. We had just been able to secure a house and a loan for a house, so we were in the process of moving into a house. We had no
Oh,
furniture in the house. I
toughness.
was like,
Yeah. Oh my
it
God.
was a lot. My husband and I were sharing one spoon that the previous homeowners had left behind, and we
No.
were just using that because we didn't have the money yet to buy like silverware. For the first 9 months of our pregnancy, I slept on a couch that we got for free because it was like, oh, money was too tight to buy a bed. And so it was one of those things that I was like, oh, I felt this pressure that I needed to keep working because we needed the money, but I also felt like I was abandoning my baby and failing my baby and failing myself at the same time. And I didn't have time for self-care, and I didn't have time for the things that were truly important. But it was this constant pull of like, I need to provide, but I also need to be the present mom who home cooks everything and makes all the baby food and does all the things that I'm supposed to do. And that pressure, for me at least, it was really overwhelming. And as I talked to more women, I found a lot of women are experiencing that pressure, that having to excel in all areas of their life. And when I talked to my husband, he didn't feel that. And a lot of other wives that I talked to, or women I talked to, were like, oh, my partner or significant other, they don't express that as being a problem. And I was like, okay, so what in our society is making women specifically feel like it's our responsibility to do all of this all the time?
And you touch on that in the book as it.
Yes, yes, in the book, I talk a little bit about the systemic factors that really influence why we are doing what we're doing. Obviously, I have a master's in English. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not an anthropologist or a sociologist, but I'm a researcher at heart. I have my master's in technical writing, so I did a lot of research. Um, and most of the theories and the concepts in the book are really backed with personal experience and a blend of research, different studies that have been done, anthropologists, psychologists, sociologists who have looked at these things, and why is our society kind of gearing women towards burnout, pushing us towards burnout, and then why are we disappointed in ourselves when we can't meet these unrealistic expectations. I'm hoping to release both of these novels, the nonfiction novel first, before the summer starts, and then the Ciao Bella Bambina at the end of the summer, and then Nothing Saltwater Can't Heal. Hopefully, I'm shooting for December. And then honestly, I'm not sure if I have another book in me or not. We'll see
Yeah,
when we get to
so
that
this
point.
is the thing. So you've got a job, you've got two children, they're still under the age of 3, I believe. Or
Yes, I have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old.
so I think it'll just be fascinating to find out, how do you find the time to write these? When did you start all of these projects? It sounds like you're a very prolific and amazing writer, but when did you find time for all of this?
So I started writing the Ciao Bella Bambina book in 2020, like literally a week after finishing my
Okay.
master's degree, which was good. And I made the commitment. So at first, I think with big projects like that, it's very common to feel overwhelmed and like I'll never do this. I'll never have the time for this. I'll put this off until life slows down. The problem is that life really never
Never
slows
slows
down.
down.
Yeah, there's never time for the things that you want. And so I made a commitment that I was going to write 500 words a day. And it was as much a passion as it was a discipline. There were days where I woke up where I was like, I don't want to write. I don't have any inspiration in me. I have nothing. And so sometimes
But
I
you
would
would
write
do it
500 words.
anyway?
Yeah, but
You
I
do
would
the
do it
500.
anyway.
Okay, even the
Yes.
days that you just felt completely off. Okay, great.
Exactly. And so I would write, and sometimes the 500 words, I was like, this is brilliant. And I would go back and I'd show my husband and I'd be like, what was I thinking? This is not brilliant. It must have been like the lack of sleep. And there were other days where it was like, oh, the words just flow and I could write 1,000 words in 30 minutes. And it was just like the story and the characters were a part of my soul. Um, so I think that's the big thing for me was I get up at 4:30 a.m. my time every morning and I write for 30 to 40 minutes before I start on my work and my jobs and before my kids get up. And then I'm really blessed that well, my husband works a lot of hours. He also has 1 or 2 days off during the week usually. And I will spend time during that time getting my actual jobs done so that in the morning when I wake up before my kids, I can really focus on writing. So the last few years have just been dedicated to writing, and now I'm trying to find time to really fine tune the art of okay, how do I market? How do I find people who are interested in my books? And I can just attest to how amazing Natalia is helping authors with all of that because it is overwhelming and it's such a blessing to have somebody who's like, here, let me hold your hand and tell you that you can do this. We will make it. Here's some tips. And it's huge, a huge help for authors. So I'm really glad you're offering this to
Oh,
us.
I love hearing about that. You really are an example to all of us. So you had the children already and you just plugged along and managed to get 3 books done. It's really inspiring. Wonderful. Great.
Thank you. I think it's that mountain. If you look at the mountain, you're like, I'm never gonna climb this and you'll never start.
Mm.
But if you do one step at a time at a day, you before you know it, 4 years have passed and you're like, oh, I did this.
And
I
you've
did
done it.
this. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
It is.
so
And so even though the births came and everything, you just stuck with 500 words a day. It was basically just your ritual and that was it.
yes, it was kind of like how they say like, oh, you should go to the gym 20 minutes a day instead of four hours a day, 2 days for 2 weeks, and then you stop and then you quit and then you start.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so I was like, I'm not gonna set a goal of 5,000 words a day or 1,000 words a day or something that's
Then you
unmanageable.
can't sit down and do it because you don't see that.
It's
Yeah.
exactly. So there were definitely days where I was like, oh my goodness, it's been weeks and I'm a quarter of the way through this story and I'm never gonna finish. And I think that's just human nature a little bit to be like, I'm not seeing progress as fast as I want to, so therefore I'm not moving forward at all. But the reality was that it's the same kind of concept of if you go to the gym for 20 minutes a day, you probably won't see really great results for the first 2 weeks, and that's okay. If you do it for 2 years, your body's going to change. And just same kind of concept with the book. It's like if you stick with it for several years, you'll have a product or a book. Your story will be told at the end of it.
And you're the living proof that it works. I love that. I think it's amazing. And I think too, I know you've been borderline burnout yourself, but I do think that's just a lovely, consistent, great approach. Because if we are trying to write too much in one day or setting ourselves too tight goals, we can
Yeah.
burn ourselves out. And then that affects our creativity, our ability to really, you know, review the text as much as we need to. And, I just think the quality of the product can be so compromised if we're just pushing ourselves to an unrealistic level. Yeah.
Yes, to always produce. And I know that a lot of authors I talk to, they're like, oh, I just use AI to help like fudge over some of the scenes. And I was like, oh, I think that that can do such a disservice to your writing. And obviously it's great to bounce around creative ideas with an AI, sure. But I'm like, oh, this is my story. This is my Nona's story. This is my aunt's story. This is the mommy needs a minute. That's my story. There's pieces of me woven into that story that I'm like, I don't want somebody else telling my story for me.
Thank you again for your time. I know it's very, very early where you are in
That's all right.
your garden.
Thank
Yeah.
thank you for your time and doing this for me. It's so lovely to chat with you. I really appreciate
Yes.
it.
It's always a pleasure. All right. So, wishing you a beautiful morning. I hope you get your 500 words done or whatever you need to do this morning. And yeah, it'll be fantastic. So we'll be in touch, and we can't wait to hear how all of your writing projects unfold and to see them for sale.
Thank you. I can't wait to share with you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Alyssa.